Fantasia Barrino!
When Fantasia Barrino walked onto the American Idol stage in 2004, most of America didn't expect much. But when she sang Summertime, everything changed.
My life with his word, and me softly with his song.
That moment didn't just make a star, it made a legend. But behind that iconic performance was a storm of trauma, betrayal, and secrets no one wanted you to know. This is the real story of Fantasia Barrino, the fame, the fall, and the truth the industry tried to bury. Before she was a household name, Fantasia was just a girl from High Point, North Carolina, the product of a broken home, systemic poverty, and generational pain. She grew up surrounded by music and struggle. Her grandfather was a preacher, her uncles part of the gospel group, the Barrino Brothers. But while music ran in her blood, so did hardship. Fantasia was taken advantage of at just 14. She dropped out of high school soon after. By 17, she was a single mother, homeless, jobless, and surviving off food stamps. She once said in an interview, "I slept in my car with my baby more times than I can count. I felt like I didn't matter." That voice, the one that made the world stop, was forged in suffering. She didn't sing to impress. She sang to survive. When Fantasia auditioned for American Idol, she was raw, barefoot, and unapologetically herself. Some judges were unsure at first. She didn't have the polished look or sound of past winners. But the moment she opened her mouth, they knew she was different. Her rendition of Summertime became a cultural reset. It wasn't just a song, it was a testimony. Simon Cowell, known for his brutal honesty, said, "You are the best contestant we've ever had." By the time Fantasia won the show at just 19, she had already become a symbol of resilience, of authenticity, and of how pain can turn into power. But the industry wasn't ready for someone like her. Winning American Idol should have been her happily ever after. Instead, it became the start of a new kind of trauma, one hidden behind red carpets and recording contracts. Fantasia's debut single, I Believe, hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Her debut album went platinum. She won countless awards, toured internationally, and even starred in her own Lifetime biopic. But the fame came with a cost. Behind the scenes, industry execs were trying to mold her into something she wasn't. Slimmer, softer, whiter sounding. They pushed her to tone it down, to ditch the gospel runs, to hide her past. She refused, and the backlash began. She was branded as difficult. Producers dropped out. Promotional support was slashed. And slowly, the same industry that celebrated her win began turning its back. By 2006, just 2 years after her win, Fantasia found herself in a financial freefall. Despite platinum records and sold-out shows, her money was gone. Mismanaged, misplaced, stolen. Her own family, including people she trusted to handle her business, had reportedly taken advantage of her. She once said, "I was signing things I didn't understand, trusting people I thought loved me." She bought her mother a house, paid for her brother's bills, hired cousins, friends, and neighbors. In the end, she was left with nothing. She won the hearts of millions with her voice, but behind the spotlight, Fantasia Barrino was being silenced. While the world celebrated her rise, contracts were signed, money was moved, and decisions were made that would leave her broken, broke, and almost buried. Shortly after winning American Idol, Fantasia was surrounded by a new team: agents, managers, publicists, lawyers, almost none of whom she chose. She was 19 years old, uneducated, overwhelmed, and suddenly a global star. And the people around her? They weren't trying to protect her. They were lining their pockets. Her contracts were deeply unfair. Her publishing?
Gone.
Her touring revenue? Heavily split. And most of the money from her album sales? Redirected. She was making others rich while barely seeing her own earnings. According to insiders, Fantasia was signed into a 360 deal, meaning her label took a cut of everything she did: music, endorsements, acting, appearances, even her book and Broadway roles. "They made millions off my pain," she once said in an emotional 2012 radio interview. "And I didn't even realize it until I was drowning in debt." Fantasia's management at the time convinced her to hire family and friends as assistants, security, and stylists. She thought she was helping those she loved. But as the money flowed, so did the lies. Some of them were stealing from her. Others leaked private information to tabloids. And a few even tried to sabotage her performances by withholding payments to band members and stylists, so she'd show up late or unprepared. Everything she worked for was being twisted into a narrative of dysfunction. She went from America's sweetheart to a mess, not because of substance or arrogance, but because she was surrounded by people who needed her to fail to keep their control. In 2010, when the media caught wind of Fantasia's relationship with Antoine Cook, a man still legally married, her image was dragged through the mud. Though court records later showed she wasn't told the truth about his marriage, the damage was done. The press painted her as a homewrecker. Brands pulled away. Offers dried up. And on August 9, 2010, everything hit a breaking point. Fantasia was found unconscious in her North Carolina home after taking on a mix of aspirin and sleeping pills. She was rushed to the hospital. Her daughter, Zion, was kept away for her own safety. And in the public eye, Fantasia's story was over. But in reality, it was the beginning of her rebirth. After surviving the incident, Fantasia emerged with a renewed fire. She released the album Back to Me in 2010, which debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 and proved she was far from finished. Her Grammy-winning performance of Bittersweet brought fans and critics back to her side, but the industry was still hesitant to embrace her.
Why?
Because Fantasia wouldn't play the puppet anymore. She started asking tough questions. Where was the money going? Why were her endorsements being blocked? Who was taking publishing rights without her consent? She demanded transparency. And that's when the doors started closing again. Fantasia didn't just have to fight for her career. She had to fight to stay visible in a system that discards strong Black women who won't be silent. After the Lifetime movie about her life, Life is Not a Fairy Tale, and her acclaimed Broadway run in The Color Purple, Fantasia seemed poised for a full-on Hollywood breakout. But the script stopped coming. You can survive the industry. You can bounce back from networks who praised her. But what happens when the people you thought would protect you,
Why?
Your blood, because Fantasia had started telling the truth, are the ones pulling you down? This is the darkest chapter of Fantasia Barrino's story. The part nobody talks about. And the part she almost didn't survive. In the early 2000s, after Fantasia's American Idol win, she did what so many from humble beginnings do. She reached back and brought her family with her. She bought houses, paid medical bills, put cousins, siblings, and old friends on her payroll. She even let relatives manage her finances and business decisions. But behind the scenes, some of those same family members were stealing from her. In her 2012 VH1 Behind the Music episode, Fantasia opened up about discovering forged signatures, unapproved bank withdrawals, and financial records that didn't add up. "The people I thought I could trust were robbing me blind," she confessed. "And I was so busy trying to survive that I didn't notice until everything was gone." It wasn't just financial betrayal. It was emotional sabotage. Some family members, according to sources close to Fantasia, leaked private information to tabloids in exchange for money. Others sabotaged her personal relationships out of jealousy. And when she finally started asking questions, the love turned to silence. "They acted like I changed," she said in a tearful 2019 podcast interview. But the truth is, they changed when I stopped letting them use me. Fantasia grew up in the church. Gospel music was her first love, and her earliest performances were in her grandfather's Pentecostal congregation. After her fall from grace in the public eye, many fans assumed the church would welcome her home. But what happened was the opposite. Certain church leaders, including pastors she had once called mentors, publicly criticized her, calling her wayward, lost, and even an embarrassment to gospel music. When Fantasia hinted at doing a gospel album in 2008, several Black church leaders quietly lobbied labels not to support it, claiming her image and lifestyle would taint the message. The truth? Many in the church were uncomfortable with her. Her history of teen pregnancy, her relationship with a married man, her tattoos, her fashion, her boldness. To them, she didn't fit the mold of a gospel singer, despite having one of the most soul-stirring, church-rooted voices of our time. She was blacklisted not just by the industry, but by the very institution that raised her. "The people who should have lifted me up were the ones tearing me down the most," she later admitted. "But God and we had to build our own relationship, without the middlemen." What many don't know is that Fantasia quietly recorded several gospel demos between 2007 and 2009. Songs of redemption, of pain, of healing, but none of them were ever officially released.
Why?
Label interference. Her label at the time reportedly felt gospel wouldn't sell and could confuse her brand. Religious backlash. Prominent gospel figures refused to collaborate or endorse her. She was seen as too worldly. Internal conflict. Fantasia herself admitted in interviews that she was afraid of the judgment and didn't want to fight for a seat at a table that didn't want her there. The irony? Years later, other mainstream artists with similar past mistakes would go on to release gospel records and be celebrated for their vulnerability. But Fantasia's voice? Silenced. Again. By 2013, after rebuilding her career with the album Side Effects of You, Fantasia was back on stage, winning awards and reclaiming her spotlight. But behind closed doors, things were falling apart again. She was in a volatile relationship with Kendall Taylor, who had a troubled past of his own. She faced another round of media scrutiny after her Instagram posts about being the only woman and submitting to her man were taken out of context. And most painfully, she had to distance herself permanently from certain family members who were still trying to manipulate her money and image. One relative even attempted to sue her, claiming she owed them royalties, despite no evidence. "I had to choose peace over blood," Fantasia later said in a 2021 interview. "Because some people only love you when they can control you." Fantasia should be mentioned in the same breath as Jennifer Hudson, Beyoncé, and Mary J. Blige. But she isn't.
Why?
Because she didn't play the game. She didn't hide the pain. She didn't conform. She told the truth, and the truth made people uncomfortable. Even when her vocals shook award stages, her trauma overshadowed her talent in the public narrative. Even when she released brilliant albums, the media focused on her messy love life. Fantasia's story was never allowed to be triumphant, only tragic. But she kept going anyway. By 2015, Fantasia had seen enough. The labels, the managers, the media that only showed up to report her lowest moments. The family that kept her stuck in emotional and financial bondage. So she walked away. She fired her entire team, left her label, stepped back from the public spotlight, and for the first time focused on healing. "I had to figure out who I was without the cameras," she said in a 2016 interview. "Was I just the girl from Idol, or was I something more?" She began therapy. She reconnected with her daughter, Zion. She stopped chasing approval and started building legacy. And then she did something no one expected. She started her own record label. In 2019, Fantasia released Sketchbook, her first independent album. It was raw, real, unfiltered. Songs about healing, about letting go, about loving herself. It was Fantasia, unchained. The industry didn't know what to do with it. There was no major promo, no massive radio budget. But fans? They felt it. "I've never been more proud of anything I've made," Fantasia said. Because this time, I didn't need anyone's permission. The success of Sketchbook proved that Fantasia didn't need the industry anymore, and that terrified them. She had found her voice. And this time, no one could take it away. In 2015, Fantasia married Kendall Taylor, a man with his own complicated past, including time in prison and battles with addiction. To the outside world, it seemed like a risky move. But behind the scenes, it was the first time Fantasia had a partner who didn't want her for her fame. Kendall encouraged therapy. He took Fantasia to church. He helped her build a business. He showed up not as a manager or a yes man, but as a partner. They built their home together, started a family, and in 2021, Fantasia gave birth to their daughter, Keziah, her second child, born after health complications that nearly ended the pregnancy. "She's my miracle baby," Fantasia said. "She reminded me that it's never too late to start again." Fantasia is no longer chasing mainstream fame, and that's exactly what's making her rise again. She's appeared on Broadway again. She's been honored by BET, the NAACP, and Black Music Foundations. She starred in the Color Purple musical film in 2023 to rave reviews, showing the world just how unstoppable she really is. She now speaks openly about mental health in the Black community, financial literacy for artists, healing from abuse and toxic family cycles, the power of choosing peace over fame. Fantasia isn't just a singer anymore. She's a blueprint. Even with all her wins, Fantasia still isn't treated with the reverence she deserves.
Why?
Because she doesn't play nice with industry politics. She doesn't curate her life to be palatable. She doesn't fit into the sanitized mold that the media often forces on Black women in the spotlight. She's messy. She's emotional. She's real. And in an industry built on image, that's still seen as a threat. But her fans? They've stayed. They've grown with her. And they know the truth. Fantasia Barrino isn't just an idol winner. She's a survivor who made it out of a system that was never designed to let her win. Fantasia's journey is a lesson in resilience in the face of betrayal, reclaiming your power when everything is taken from you, choosing truth over popularity, and refusing to let your trauma define your legacy. She's not the voice of a generation. She's the voice of survival. And her story proves that no matter how far you fall, if you have the courage to rise, you write your own ending. Fame fades. But the truth? That always finds a way out. This is Celebrity Exposé, where we uncover what's really written in the shadows. If you thought this was powerful, wait until you see the next exposé, because not every downfall is an accident.
Subscribe. Stay tuned.
And remember, some stories were never meant to stay buried.